Welcome to the Empathic Mastery Show. I'm your host, Jennifer Moore, and I'm so glad you're here. This is a place where we talk about what it means to be highly sensitive and empathic, how this impacts all aspects of our lives, and we explore tools, resources, and solutions so we can shift from absorbing all the thoughts, feelings, and energy of the world around us to being beacons for calm, love, and healing. Hey there, everybody. I'm back with another episode of the Empathic Mastery Show, and I have a really interesting conversation for you guys with my guest, Cassandra Deann Van Kuren. Cassandra is a certified human design reader. She's a podcaster of the show Things I Talk About, which is where we got to connect when she invited me to be I pitched to her and she welcomed me onto her show, Things I Talk About. And she is a writer assisting others in their deconditioning process from societal programming. Cassandra's heartfelt aspiration is to inspire and uplift individuals by sharing her story, empowering others to embrace their authentic expression as well. Cassandra, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. I'm so excited to chat with you again. So wonderful.
Absolutely. So before we dive into the big topic of human design, I always love to start with the beginning. I love to start with how you identify as a sensitive person, an intuitive person, an empath. What was it? When did you realize you were a sensitive person? Kind of like, what were the early days like for you? Which usually is going to lead us into how did you end up doing the work you're doing? So let's start at the beginning. Tell me about your childhood or whenever it was that you realized that you were not necessarily not quite like the others.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. So interestingly enough, most of where the realizations came from has actually been in the last 2 to 3 years of my life. I grew up in a religiously abusive home and really I was sort of groomed to meet the needs of others. I had no language of intuition or what would be normal or right. It was sort of just living in this fight or flight, mentality of things, trying to please others, be, what was asked of or expected of me. And I really, looking back, feel like I didn't have any sense of individual expression or personal authority. However, the universe decided it was time. And during a solar eclipse back in 2021, I experienced a spontaneous spiritual awakening. And This was like overnight going from one person to the other. And through this journey, I discovered myself as an intuitive. I didn't know much about what it meant to be an empath or, that some people are more sensitive to what others are feeling or thinking, which I find interesting, really looking back at my childhood, because, that was kind of what I was groomed to do. So I feel like in ways I've just been releasing and liberating myself, really learning to play with life, embrace who I am, and get to know myself. It's been an incredible self-discovery journey. And I think that, it's also new. I consider myself intuitive. I know one particular instance I can think of was, at a certain point in my journey, I started getting a regular dialogue. My strongest clair gift is clairaudience. Mm-hmm. And I remember someone saying once to me, that's how that works for you, but that's not necessarily how everybody, has it. And so I've really started to appreciate everybody's uniqueness, and really learning to rest into that and what it does mean, to claim back my personal authority and use the empathic gifts, you could say, or intuitive gifts for good, and not from, manipulation.
Right, right. There are so many things that you're saying. And I will say that sort of decolonizing from conservative religious traditions, from dogma, from all of these things is something that is such a passion of mine and such an interesting topic for conversations. And this is something I've brought some other guests on to talk about before. And so one thing that I'm curious about is, were you raised, was in terms of sort of and I'm assuming we're talking a conservative religious tradition, were you raised within a larger, greater community where you were expected, or was this a very like homeschooled out in the middle of nowhere, like no exposure to the outside world kind of experience? Like, was it a very insular family religious experience, or was it like you were being raised within a larger community that had a whole bunch of sort of doctrine and dogma you were supposed to follow?
Yeah. Oh gosh, that's a really good question. So there was another factor that sort of played into this. I think that will help answer that question. So in terms of what religious, experience it was, is I've learned that it's called fundamentalist Christianity. So it's like very, very literal. However, the extra piece added to this is I've realized that there were some added influences from my mother. There was a lot of narcissism. So we actually were very sheltered from not only the church, but also our family outside of that personal home. So I actually did go to public school. There's only two children, it was me and my brother. My brother was homeschooled, but I was the first child, and I did go, I did go to regular public school. And so while we were active in the church, it was very much controlled. Also, my mother was very much into topics that the church wasn't so easily accepting of. She was very big on deliverance and casting out demons. So eventually she ended up calling herself an apostle and kind of starting her own ministry. So yeah, it was kind of isolated. We didn't have much exposure to the outside world.
No, I have in my extended family a fundamentalist Christian family member who is, they're so like, it's like no church is good enough for them. Like they are so incredibly precise and so like oriented towards life through their interpretation of the Bible.
Exactly.
That no other, that no organization is good, is conservative enough. No organization is fundamentalist enough. And so it's an interesting thing where you have somebody where they're just like so baked into something that it's like even the church isn't like has too much leeway. So that sounds like an amazingly challenging experience, both between, like, just as you were saying, you were being groomed to really be sensitive to the needs, I'm assuming, of your narcissistic mother. And I will say the connection between narcissistic mothers and empathic daughters, I've seen over and over and over again. It seems to be a quality that happens a lot with this. And so you have that plus just that very conservative upbringing and experience. You said something else that I want to pull out of this, which is that you went from kind of, I don't know, just living your life to suddenly in 2021 having this like very, very like 180 pivot spiritual awakening. And I know I definitely know of people who've had these kind of like really sudden awakenings. I also know a lot of people who have sort of more the incremental gradual experience. But I really wanted to say, it's like this stuff can happen instantly.
Yeah.
The lifestyle change, the experience can happen instantly. It's not like sometimes it just does. And so what was that like for you to, were you just like living an ordinary conservative, ordinary life, like working at some kind of office job or, like
Yeah.
what was the experience for you?
Oh goodness. So it's like so much I could say. So first I moved out when I was 18. And so it took me a while, I would say probably till mid 20s before I finally felt like I separated somewhat from the church. But even when I moved out on my own, because of the fear we were raised under, I was still very fearful. And so while I was not regularly in the church, my life was very much ran by this constant shame and guilt and heaviness and fear. I mean, I had so much fear of, things like the rapture and being left behind and, being possessed by demons and, opening myself up to things, because that was a big part of what was instilled in us is essentially that we were in control. We could be possessed, and, we all of it, it's anything, any way it can happen. There was more talk of the devil than there was of God. And so I lived with that fear. So I was not entertaining this stuff at all, and I joke that I was not the likely candidate for this, from one perspective to another. I did have two spiritual friends. However, I thought they were, not quite. I'm like, okay, all right, sweetie, sure, you do you know. But I was very conservative. My husband, one of those fun stories is my husband likes to share how I didn't even believe in the dinosaurs. I argued with him because we were taught that wasn't real. That was like the devil's ploy to, mess up the, original plan of, God, saying God didn't create dinosaurs. So dinosaurs aren't real and all this stuff. And so I kind of lived in that zone of naive cluelessness and fear. And so, I've heard that a lot of times people awaken with, extreme circumstances. Have found it interesting that it was just during a solar eclipse, which actually is kind of where that transition took place. It was like the veil lifted. And I all of a sudden understood all these things like I had been studying it forever. And especially when we consider human design, there are a lot of ancient modalities in this. And I picked it up like nothing. It just felt like it was information dormant that just sort of arose. So it was very sudden and very transformative, reshaped the complete foundation of my life, my relationships, my marriage, everything.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now I am imagining if your husband believed in dinosaurs or believes in dinosaurs, that he was not raised as in the same kind of conservative background. And so was he able to support you in this awakening and in this transition?
So at first it was really fun because, all of a sudden I'm lightening up and I'm engaging in conversations like, aliens and the workings of the universe, things that I never felt at liberty to entertain. So it's kind of like with everybody's awakening journey, I feel like in the beginning, everything's just exciting and full of magic and potential. But I grew at such an accelerated rate that it quickly became a little overwhelming for A, to keep up, and for two, to process what he felt and he believed in comparison to what I was resonating with. And, I believe I'm big on energy. And I think that anytime there's an energetic shift in a relationship, it's sort of a renegotiation period. I believe that our relationships are the way they are for a reason. And then when that shifts, it's kind of like, okay, things have to change or, they fall away. So I had many relationships fall away. My husband and I had to kind of reach rock bottom and then build back up from there. And to this day, I'd say we're doing pretty good. Things have shifted in so many ways.
Well, and you're still together. You guys have found your way.
20 years.
20 years. Amazing. Yes. Amazing. Well, and you were saying about just being raised in such a system of fear. It really is kind of amazing considering how indoctrinated you were into the ideas of demonic possession and the rapture, and like even that, like, the concept of dinosaurs is like the Satan's ploy to get us to, let go of our faith. It's kind of amazing that even with the awakening that you said yes to all of this. Like, and I wonder if this has anything to do with you in terms of your human design, that you had that ability, which kind of leads me towards like the conversation about, let's talk about human design. But, like, what do you think it was that allowed you to embrace all of these things that you were taught were like, not just dangerous, but really lethal for your soul?
Yeah. I think that I quickly really resonated after my awakening with reincarnation. And as I said, I feel like a lot of this information arose studying and getting to know myself through astrology and human design has been definitely eye-opening. I've learned so much about myself. And I do think it was something that when I came into this life, there was a plan. There was a purpose, and it was time. It was time for those gifts from knowledge and wisdom from prior lifetimes to activate and to come on, for a purpose, for a reason. And yet you are correct. My human design chart and my astrology chart both offered great insights into, who I was. And it was total opposite from what I was living. Hence the deconditioning from societal's programming. Yeah.
Well, and isn't it interesting that it was an eclipse that sort of precipitated this? Because if you think about eclipses are about seeing everything in a completely different way. It's like the standard thing you see, you can't see it. Like it's being obstructed in some way. And so it gives us a capacity to see things completely differently. So it's almost like the eclipse kind of, like you said, it pulled the veil back. It eliminated that, the solar obstruction, or the sort of that light that was being cast on you, that was having you follow a path that wasn't even yours. And now, amazingly, here we are. So I wanted to also say that as you were speaking about like taking to things like that past life experience, I had the very similar experience with tarot. I picked up my first deck of cards and I just knew how to read them. I knew them. I understood them. I went and took a tarot class like that was just being taught by like a kid who was kind of into it. But when I was in college, and I knew like within the first 15 minutes of the class, I knew more than he did. And I'd only been working with cards for like a couple weeks. And I was able to like share about and talk about and teach the class. It was bizarre. And so I've had a very similar experience with certain things, certain prayers, just where it was like, as soon as I said them the first time, they were just baked in and I knew them, even though I wasn't raised in the tradition. So I've had that experience of just like the knowing of certain things like that. So let's talk about human design. So let's start with just like, what is human design for people who are not familiar with it?
Absolutely. Yeah. So I'm going to kind of give you a little bit of the formal definition and then I'm going to put it in my words. So the formal definition would be that this is a modality that takes a variety of different ancient sciences and modern sciences such as astrology, the Hindu chakra system, the Kabbalah tree of life, the Chinese I Ching, and then it uses quantum physics and biochemistry and, all those sort of things and kind of puts them all together, synchronizes them and comes up with what is called your body graph or your human design chart. So what exactly does that mean? Especially because a lot of times when they first pull up, people pull up their human design chart, it's like, there's all these shapes and symbols and numbers and it's just so many layers.
Yes.
And, so I look at it this way. I like the term, which I think his name is Robert Edward Grant, I think, calls it anytime we're looking at a system, a modality that uses our birth information, what we're looking at is our light signature. So I like that term of light signature. So what this is it is your blueprint or your light signature of who you are, your aura, what you are, who you are in the world, how you interact with the world, what you contribute. And it also uncovers some of your deepest journeys and, things you're here to grow and evolve and experience in your life. So used in a manner that is empowering, I think human design is one of the best cheerleaders you could possibly have for your life. Of course, with any systems, whether it be astrology, numerology, whenever we're working with systems, though, I think it's always important to, remember that these are tools that are here to help us evolve and grow. So there are people who can take these in a more dogmatic fashion that feels more limiting. But, I think that human design is a great tool to offer amazing insights on, journeys you're meant to grow and evolve through and your strengths and what you're here to share. Yeah.
Yes. Well, and what I've noticed about human design in my limited exposure to it is that it's really helpful in terms of understanding, like figuring out strategies for navigating the things that can get in our way and also understanding why certain things, like especially like core issues where we're like, oh my God, I've been working on this thing for my entire life. Well, so often show up in human design is like, well, of course you struggle with this because that's within your human design. And that's why you would be dealing with this. That's why that would be happening. Before we go any further into human design, I realized I didn't ask you the $1 million question, which was, how did you discover human design? Like, how did you end up going into this?
Yeah. So it was funny because I was going to add a comment to what you just shared, but really that backtracks into that. And one of the reasons why I love why I love human design and I got into it is because actually, I mentioned my awakening, and I know you know a little bit about astrology, so I think you might think this is fun. So the solar eclipse was in Gemini. That was in my 9th house. So for those who don't know much about astrology, this is exploring, belief systems, what we think. It can be tied to religion, philosophy, culture, getting a deeper depth of topics, of things. And Gemini is the open mind and curious and, entertaining this, entertaining that, it's not dogmatic. And so the solar eclipse with Gemini, and Gemini happens to be the sign where my house ruler is in my natal chart. So there was a lot of important key elements. But why I got into human design is because I had my love for astrology with what I went through. I wanted to understand what happened to me and why, it felt so cosmic and, mystical. And so I loved astrology. And one of the astrologers that I was familiar with got into human design. At first, I actually kind of was like, I'm okay. I'm good with astrology. But I believe that when you're meant to know something, the universe will keep putting it in front of you over and over and over again. And so this is what happened. And so I decided, okay, before I book a reading or go down this rabbit hole, let me just look at the chart. And I looked at what they call the Rave Mandala, which is the most complicated visual of the human design chart because it shows all of the astrology, all of the I Ching, like all of the different layers. And I was just in love. Like it was like stars and hearts were bugging out of my eyes. And so I sort of how you describe with your tarot class, I kind of was like started to deep dive into it. By the time I got to my reading, I felt like I knew more than what I was getting. And it just went from there. But why I love it is because I can talk astrology with somebody for 1 hour. And if they don't know the aspects, what the houses mean, you know, the different elements, I'm just sort of intuitively giving them information that they're trusting my judgment and they might get it. They might be overwhelmed. Human design, I can talk with somebody for an hour. And like you talked about, it helps to digest those core elements, those repetitive. I can share and they can leave home with their chart and take that and run with it. Take what I applied and discover more and learn more. It's a very digestible system for those who are interested in it. And plus, it still has a lot of astrology in it. So, you know, it still has that element that I love.
Wonderful. Well, and so you basically happened to discover astrology, and in some ways it was just the person who you were following got into human design, and that's how you got there. And as soon as you started to dip your toe in it, you were like, oh my God, I'm in love. This just makes so much sense.
And then I went through, I read the first book from the founder, Ra of Human Design. I wanted to know more. So I went through a reader course through another, reader, finished that. I wanted to know more and then ultimately ended up being certified through Human Design through a different organization. So
Yeah. Okay. So now let's talk about anybody who knows even a little bit about human design, you've heard projector, manifesting generator, or reflector. Let's talk about the types, and just maybe you can give us like a little bit of an understanding, kind of a quickie of the different types.
Absolutely. Yeah. Sure. Yeah. So the reason why that's important is, with human design, that's the first thing you should always look at and begin to understand is your energy type. And there are 5 different energy types. And basically what this helps us to understand is sort of what role we play in the collective, in society. And each one has their own unique way of operating and what they share in the world. And so the most common types are what's called the generators and manifesting generators. Now, so the generator is, and I'm trying to keep this basic without all of the complicated lingo in the chart. So generally speaking, the generator has an open and enveloping aura. If you are a generator, you're someone that's meant to tap into your heart, follow what inspires you, what brings curiosity. As you align with these things in your life, then your aura becomes open, enveloping, and spilling over. And when people are in your presence, they sort of feel motivated and uplifted, and you don't even have to do anything. It's just being in your presence. So for a generator, it's important for you to follow your heart, follow the things that you're curious, excited about. And the more you do, the more ease and flow you'll experience in your life. The generator also has more of a path of mastery. When they find the thing that they like, they generally build upon it. And, this path leads more towards mastery, where the manifesting generator is sort of a combination of the generator and the manifester, which is a less common energy. And the manifesting generator has the same qualities as the generator with a few differences. One is they are not meant to follow a linear path. They are meant to be guided, follow their heart as the generator. But instead of that mastery, instead, it's like an express route. They're called the Energizer bunnies of human design. It's like if you wanted to learn, let's say, go get a particular degree in college, and they say you need these 5 courses, the manifesting generator would say, no, I don't. This one's relevant. This one's relevant. I don't need this one. I'll take that one. So it's sort of an express route of getting there. And it's non-linear, but as they age, all of the pieces they've collected in their life tend to come together to formulate a picture in the end. But until that happens, the heads of others around you might be spinning, why you're from here to there, but that's okay. You just roll with it. Their aura is open, enveloping, and they also, when they're following what lights them up, people in their presence can benefit, just like I described with the generator. So those are the 2 most common types, making up about 70% of the population.
Wow.
Next is the projector. Now, the projector is super cool. I mean, a lot of people say they envy the manifesting generator because they're so fast. But personally, I think it would be awesome to be a projector because they have this incredible, unique perspective. They have the bird's eye view. So if we're in the desert and the elephants and the tigers, the big animals are stomping around on the ground and they're, really making waves and moving fast, they look up to the bird on the branch and say, I need to go here. What's the best route? The projector can look and say, okay, this way is blocked, go here, this way, and provide instruction, provide guidance. So the projector is the guide. They make about 20% of the population. So the projector can take something, an idea, and make it more efficient, more organized, make it run smoother. And there are so many reasons why I could explain why this is, but I'm just giving the basic overview.
Yeah.
So with the projector, a key here is that, it's like God gave you this gift to have super guidance on how everybody should be running their life. So there is an element to where for a projector, they have to be recognized and they want to wait for people to notice their gifts and talents before sharing their guidance. Otherwise, they can kind of be wasting their energy.
Yes.
The next would be the manifester. So the manifester is only about 9% of the population.
Wow.
And the manifester are the people that are here to question authority, to go against the grain, to make waves. These in our history were the people that started wars and, caused changes of how governments were run and things operated. They question authority. They bring new insights and they run with these things. They do have more limited energy, but with the manifester, they get bursts of, like, if you think of the power, and the, authority to move when the time is right. And so they tend to come to realizations quickly for where they want to go. And it's important for them to kind of consider that that there are people around them. So letting people know that are affected by your decision before you just go off and do things is one of the things they're here to grow and learn. And then the last is the reflector. And the reflector is super rare, making only less than 2% of the population.
Yeah, I was doing the math and figured it had to be around 1% or something. I actually I have a friend who's a reflector. So
that's cool. Yeah. And so when a reflector is in total harmony and alignment with who they are, we can look at this as these are the people that are most like naturally rooted in the rhythms of nature and life and, just the ancestry of the earth, really, cycles and seasons and grounding. And the reflector has this gift of being able to, as it sounds, reflect or mirror those around us. They say if you want to know how you're doing in life, go have lunch with a reflector and you'll quickly realize how you're doing as they kind of reflect back to you your exact energy. This is also neat. They say actors, a lot of actors that are reflectors, they do really good because, they can mirror and emanate different things. And so, I see this as the beauty of it in the most aligned expression is harmony and alignment to the seasons and cycles of life and resting outside of that toxic masculine, and just balancing the yin and the yang.
So let's talk about the component of, how does this intersect with being highly sensitive and empathic?
Yeah, awesome. Okay. So in human design, when you're looking at what they call the body graph, there are 9 different energy centers. These are connected to both the Hindu chakra system and the Kabbalah tree of life. And so with these centers, anytime you have the centers colored in, this means that that is defined. That means that this is fixed, dependable energy that you have in your life. And each one of these centers has a different theme or a purpose. And if they are not colored in and they are what's considered undefined or open, then what it means is whatever that center is, whatever that theme it holds is kind of like when we look at the Hindu chakra system, we know, that the crown operates different than the heart. They're talking about 2 different areas of our life, of our energetic body. So whatever is undefined and white, not filled in, these areas, you actually magnify the energy around you. So just using the term of emotions, which are in the human design chart connected to the solar plexus. So if someone has this undefined, then that means that, for example, myself, I am defined. So if I'm in your presence and I'm stressed to, let's say, a 4 out of 10, you're going to feel it and you're going to feel it like a 6 or an 8. And you're going to say, oh my gosh, Cassandra, are you okay? And I'll be like, yeah, I'm over here chilling like at a 4. What are you worried about? And so it magnifies. So whether it be emotions, whether it be inspiration, ideas, confusion, whether it be energetics of how an environment feels, or fear is connected to the splenic center. So whatever center it is and whatever theme that it is, these things sort of amplify. So I look at it as according to how the human design system teaches us that really it would, kind of almost restrict where it defines what is what. And so I think that's, if I'm being honest, a topic I've always been curious about, especially when we consider what it means, as I gave the example of the solar plexus being defined or undefined. According to human design, what this means is if you have this undefined, this means you're non-emotional, which means if you experience emotions, it's only because of the transits or the people around you. And that's when you will experience or feel things, and you will feel them magnified if they were undefined. So talk about, I think last time I had a conversation with you, we explored the scale of, empathic and functioning versus not, and, being around people, and being able to function, or being like, I can't be around you because you drain me, so there's a wide range there. So for a non-emotional, you could say maybe these people are more sensitive in that regard. If you have the solar plexus defined according to human design, this means that you have what's considered an emotional wave that is up and down, and it is completely outside of your control, and it has nothing to do with anything. You can wake up happy or sad for no reason whatsoever. And you're taught to just, you have to wait your wave out. You have to, wait for things to become neutral before you make decisions, and sort of just ride the wave. And I think that's something I've always kind of been, inquisitive about, because I have in my spiritual journey have looked a little bit as our emotions are kind of like a compass to us to bring awareness to things that need our attention or not. And I am also sensitive to heavier astrology transits, and that I know for a fact. And so whenever I feel these emotions, I look at it as, okay, there's something that wants to communicate with me, whether it's I'm meant to go sit down, journal, maybe self-reflect, shadow work, look at what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling what I feel. So that's one thing. While I love human design, I'm also a Gene Keys guide, which is associated with human design as well, but they kind of focus, the founder is Richard Rudd, and he focuses more on the I Ching aspect of things. But one thing that he said that really resonated with me is he said, these systems are wonderful. They're great for introducing this information into the world. If I wouldn't have learned human design, I wouldn't have the ability to grasp where I'm at, who I am, and the ways I have. However, we are multifaceted and magical, and the universe is not limited by some sort of system that was introduced. So while they're great, and some of them absolutely, I resonate with being divinely guided, but they're not the one all be all to answer everything. So while I love human design, I think when it comes to considering, being empathic and sensing, the emotions of others and being intuitive, because same thing for, there's so many things that kind of get mixed up in there that, while I love the system, I think to myself, okay, but let's not be dogmatic.
Right. Well, and you and I it's interesting thinking about this sort of idea of the open center. I have a mentee who has a completely open solar plexus, and they are extremely sensitive to picking up energy. But it's interesting hearing the idea of the wave of emotion, and like you could wake up happy, you could wake up sad if you have a fixed solar plexus. Because I'm thinking, in my experience as a highly sensitive empathic person, and, is that my personal experience is that, yes, I can wake up happy or sad, but to me, usually if there's no reason, if there's no emotional correlation whatsoever to why I feel the way that I feel, like there's nothing in my own life that corresponds, it almost always has to do with the fact that there is something going on in the greater world that I am picking up on as an empath. And and that idea that it's just sort of these random waves of emotion that have nothing to do with anything, that doesn't ring true to me. And as you and I, before we jumped on to the record or turned on the recording, I was commenting about the fact that in the grand scheme of things, human design is the new kid on the block. Like, this is something that was developed in the 1980s. And we're talking about, yes, it's utilizing systems that are thousands of years old. But it's still, to me, it's still in the place where it should be still codified. It should still be defined, like discovering, exploring, like to get dogmatic with a system that's only like 40 years old. That seems a little like premature to commit to something when it's kind of like your mileage may vary. Because I know in my own journey and my own experience, things that I thought I knew like 40 years ago, I'm now like, maybe that was sort of a conclusion you jumped to. So I hear you about just sort of, I really agree that emotions are much more of a compass and a way to orient ourselves and to understand ourselves. And I certainly don't think of emotions as just this. That in some ways is a very mindfulness meditation perspective, kind of being, just watch the clouds go by. But I don't know. I think emotions, yes, we need to learn how to ride the wave, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the wave doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I think by holding to that statement that, as far as the wave and it being random, and as we go deeper, there are levels where, like they say, one wave is sensitive to expectations. Mm-hmm. So they do add a layer, but still, I feel like almost, what I, in my mind, sort of entertain and dance around with is really, if that is the case and it's consistent and it's out of our control and just random as is, that, it loses some of that authority. I personally love shadow work. In going, with my journey, I did go to counseling earlier on because in my marriage, we almost ended up divorced, before all of this. And I started to understand emotions a little bit better in my life. But it didn't give me that deep healing of my childhood that my spiritual awakening journey has. Yeah. So the idea of looking at our feelings with such depth and clarity and understanding. So it almost feels like I know by my ability to do that and understand and self-reflect, because I think that's important. If someone upsets us, there's that moment where instead of jumping to blame, we want to look at, okay, what am I feeling and why? Where is that coming from? So to kind of take that away, which is what it feels like it takes away a form of my authority that I felt in my life. It's, it being able to process my emotions has been a transformative journey of mine, and like we talked about the transits, according to human design, if you have not like your solar plexus isn't defined, your baseline is calm, cool, and collected. You shouldn't be feeling the transits. They teach us that this is where it's at. They can't wake up happy and sad for no reason. They're just here. And unless something bad happens to you specifically, or you're magnifying the person next to you, you should be calm, cool, and collected. So then based on that, then there's no cosmic influence that's inviting us to explore the deeper subconscious and aspects of ourselves. So yeah.
Well, and one of the things that I'm thinking is this kind of reminds me of one of those age-old questions of like fate versus choice.
like free will versus just like you as a human being are just a bunch of you're a chemical soup, and you're going to do what you're going to do. You're going to feel what you're going to feel. You're just destined to experience this the way it's going to be. And it's almost like this kind of, I don't know, fatalistic quality of just like, yep, you're just going to feel these feelings. But it's interesting. I'm thinking, even just thinking about people with open centers and that idea that they're going to be, by their nature, they should be just calm, cool, and collected. I'm like thinking about what it means, like the person I know who is an open center, and I believe they're also a projector like I am, but knowing this person who's like open center projector, they are so sensitive to their environment, to the world around them. And it's like they're constantly, I guess it's sort of like, it's not just the one person that's next to you. It's like the entire environment that's impacting them. And it's a nonstop impact because we're living in a world right now. So I can imagine, just in terms of if the solar plexus is kind of the center of our emotional response.
Yes.
That if you have stuff in there, you're going to be less susceptible to picking things up and absorbing them than if there's nothing going on in there. And so I can understand how if somebody's just looking at their human design chart and seeing an open solar plexus, that could be an indication of being substantially more susceptible to that amplifying of all of the emotions or the intensity and the feelings going on in the world around you, as opposed to if somebody's got a lot of activity already there. It's kind of like, even like the concept of probiotics, like, give somebody, like take good probiotics so that you can crowd out the there isn't room for the bad stuff. But I can see that, but sort of taking it to that next step of just like emotions are just random.
Yeah. Do you know if she has a defined identity center? I'm curious.
I had this conversation with her probably 2 years ago. And so if I did, I don't remember.
Yeah.
But I just remember a conversation. One of the things she was commenting about was the fact that she has an open center. And I think as I'm looking at this or I'm thinking about it, I might also have an open center myself. Yeah.
It's also fascinating to entertain. And one thing I will say, which I guess would kind of, lean towards, it's like, I feel like we should have a chart, tick marks of like, is this accurate? Do we not think it's accurate? But I guess one positive tick mark towards human design, I guess I would give is, I will say, I know I've shared this with you in conversations, that I don't find myself frequently being drained by the energy around me. And my solar plexus is defined. Mm-hmm. So that would be, according to, human design, I guess that would be a tick mark to, okay, that kind of matches up, as it goes for that. Now for me, I know when we talked last time, I told you I feel very sensitive to it. I would label it as just energetics. Like I literally feel the vibrations in the air. And when I meditate, like I'm buzzing like crazy and I can feel my extended aura. And so in human design, I have my identity center undefined. And that is an align to being sensitive to the energetics of an environment. So, I can sense, because when we look at, really, if we go deep and we look at, the emotional scale of frequency, when we're looking at lower, heavier emotions, we're looking at, different vibrational frequencies, lower vibrations than versus when we get up higher, joy, love, peace, which is, higher frequency. So it's interesting all to consider, because I feel like I can relate to it through frequency more than I can by saying, oh, yes, I felt drained. I could feel so much of their emotion. But yet sometimes I do. But I wouldn't say I would consider myself highly sensitive to that. I consider myself intuitive and sensing it. But yeah, it's so interesting.
It is so interesting. Well, and even that idea of, well, something you said a while back that I think is really interesting. And I'm just looking at I pulled up my chart just out of curiosity.
Yeah.
I don't have a single open center.
You're no way.
Yeah, way.
You gotta be kidding me.
No, you want to, well, I'll show you when we're done with this conversation. I'll show you unless you're like, oh my God, let's look at your chart.
So you have all 9 centers colored in.
Well, actually so let me see the top one.
Oh, wait. Okay. Yeah. You're a projector, so you wouldn't have all of them.
I have, so the top center is, so the crown is white. And then the crown is white. The first square is white and the second square is white. So actually, would that be solar plexus is the second square?
I'd have to. So when
I'll show it to you when we get a chance
you'll have
later.
to show it to me.
Yeah.
So with white, that means undefined. So if you're a projector, you've got something in there defined, but it sounds like, if I'm understanding you correctly, you have a lot of white going on.
I have three things that are white, and then everything else. So
is colored in.
Everything else is colored in my entire chart, and everything has lots of most everything has numbers in it as well. So
for the solar plexus, if you follow the row in the center, so then the spleen and the solar plexus are going to be on the little triangle, the triangles on the sides.
Yes.
So the solar plexus will have like number 30. It'll have, trying to remember, 55. So can you see those numbers on your chart somewhere? Whatever has like 55.
Yeah, actually nothing has 55. So 55 is in a triangle on the side.
That is the solar plexus. That's the solar plexus.
That is colored.
So then that would mean you are the same as me. Emotional. So that would mean,
I'm an emotional projector.
So if I was reading for you, then I would say you have the emotional wave and you have to wait through that. But technically, according to human design, I wouldn't read you as magnifying the energy around you.
Whereas I definitely have magnified energy around me my entire life, which also leads me to wonder things like, how does human design, and this is like a whole other conversation, but how does human design take into consideration, like, when we are like born prematurely or we're born late, or just any number of different sort of mitigating factors, as well as even the concept of progressed charts or something, because, that seems to really influence it.
Yeah.
Cassandra, I cannot honestly believe how quickly the time has gone by. Yeah. Because I could absolutely keep this conversation going for hours. This is just the concepts of it and how we can use human design, but especially as understanding ourselves as highly sensitive people, understanding ourselves in the world, and starting to look at strategies. So I'm going to actually ask you one more question before I ask you, so what else? And that would be, what strategies would you suggest from the standpoint of human design for the highly sensitive person? And let's narrow it down to the human people who have a defined solar plexus and people who have an undefined solar plexus. What strategies would you, in your experience, not the dogma of human design, but what strategies would you suggest from either of, from those two standpoints for people who identify as empaths and who feel like they're picking stuff up?
Yeah, that's a good question. So the first thing that comes to mind is when we're looking at emotions and things or feeling emotion, always we need to have time, whether it's a walk, meditation, whatever, a period where you can start to acknowledge what's yours, what you may be feeling collectively, and what is not yours. If it is yours, human design is great in the sense of you can look at transits just like in astrology.
Mhm.
So you can look and see, like, for example, right now it's 43 is the present gate that is being activated. I have noticed for myself getting emotional because I've wanted to plug ahead, keep busy, keep doing. And the universe has been telling me, slow down, offer space and time and silence for the insights. Insights is the theme of 43. So when we understand the collective energy as it goes through that, a lot of times, if you're discovering, okay, this is mine, but what is it? What am I feeling? I love earlier in the conversation where you talked about exploring those core, subject matters that continue to repeat in our lives. So understanding those things, and finding that balance, every one of those numbers, every one of those energy centers in human design, there's a polarity, there's a gift, and there is a shadow, and the shadow has multiple expressions. So self-reflection, you have to be able to have some sort of self-reflection first and foremost to acknowledge what's there, be gentle with yourself for what you are feeling, explore it, and then you can look at some of these, the information in human design, what's going on collectively, what's going on in my chart. There are key placements that are especially, significant that repeat in our lives. And, I always look at it as if I understand the shadow and the gift, I know how to realign. I know how to come to my authentic expression. And so I would say those are great tools. But yeah, it starts with the pausing and the meditation and the self-reflection.
Well, and if I understand the shadow and the gift, I can thrive in life. I can use it to my advantage. Okay. So last three questions. The first one is just what else? Anything that you would kick yourself if you did not share today?
Well, gosh, I think of this whole conversation, what is mostly coming to me is it sounds like you and I are both on the same page of being interested in exploring what you're feeling. I feel like if we've gotten anything out of this, it's, looking at what is it that you feel? Why is it that you feel what you feel? And, I loved when we talked that scale of like you shared and reaching the center to where we can be empathic and we can be sensitive, but we can also know and recognize the gifts in that and being able to share those gifts. And so, on that journey, use what system you like, and if human design works for you and you find out something that's insightful, you can hold on to one of those gift potentials I referred to, and that allows you to balance out, then that's great. But at the end of the day, I think self-reflection and exploring your feelings, man, what a tool that is for yourself, that you can give yourself.
Well, and I'm really hearing sort of, take what you like and leave the rest. Like use this to work as a tool for you, but don't become so caught up in it that you throw away your own internal truth. So next question is our time travel exercise. And I always like to explain it that I believe that podcasts exist outside of time. We record this episode, we drop it into the river of time, and it lasts on a server and is listened to for years and years and years later. But I also believe it has the ability to broadcast a message backwards, to send energy and to send a message back. And so I always like to think of it as that we're taking like the ribbon of time or the river of time, and we're just folding it over on itself. And you and I are going to go back to a time where young Cassandra Deann needs to hear something. She needs a message. And so, and this is like you and I are going to go back there and we're going to talk to her. And so what I'm going to ask you is, who are we going back to? When are we going back to? Who is the Cassandra that needs this message? And then let's talk to her as if she's there. Like we're right there with her and we're letting her know what she really needs to hear. So not like, like just really like you are, speaking directly to her. Yeah. So where are we going and what are we saying?
Oh, that's tugging on my heartstrings.
I can see, yeah.
I would say 7-year-old. 7-year-old me. You are unique. You are exactly who you're meant to be. You are magical. You are special. Give yourself grace and time. And just allow yourself to play. Yeah. Allow yourself to play.
And I'm hearing to also tell her it's going to be okay. This is a hard time right now. And you're going to get through it. Yeah. You are unique. You are magical. You are a really special human being. And you're going to have a chance to express all of this. Yes. Keep going.
Goodness. Love it. So powerful.
So powerful. It's really, yeah. I mean, I really do believe we do time travel. It's really,
I believe it too.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So final question. How do we get in touch with you?
Yeah. So, I can't say I love all the social media platforms. I'd say you can go to my site and email me if you'd like. My site is my name, Cassandra Deann. That's DEANN.com. Send me a message. I like community and connection, but more than anything, I'd say my podcast. If anything I said resonates, go check that out and, connect
things
with me
I talk
there.
About.
Yeah. And things I talk about.
Things I talk about, and you can find it on all major platforms, I'm imagining. Yeah.
Yeah. Yes.
And we'll include links for all of this in the show notes so that you guys can go and check it out. And hey, while you're at it, go listen to our conversation, because I had a wonderful conversation with Cassandra a little while ago. So Cassandra, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom about human design and your remarkable story. And I just want to say, I'm just so glad that you answered the call to your awakening, that you didn't just, kick it down the road or ignore it or hit the snooze button, that you took it on. And now here you are, just sharing light and doing what you're here to do.
Thank you. Thank you. I receive. Thank you.
I'm so glad.
As we come to the end of this episode, I'd love to hear what you're taking from this show. Please jump over to empathicmasteryshow.com to leave your comments. In the show notes, you'll find a link to grab your copy of my Empathic Safety Guide, 3 Basics for Finding Calm in the Eye of the Storm. And while you're there, please subscribe and follow this show. And thank you for your help sharing this show with the people who need it. Please help me to spread the word and send this podcast to friends or family members who need support living as highly sensitive empathic people. Then join me again when the next Empathic Mastery Show airs. Okay, one last time. Hop over to empathicmasteryshow.com for your Empathic Safety Guide. And until next show, shine on. We need you and your gifts here on this planet. So please don't judge your empathic rainbow by colorblind standards.